My name is Morgan Young. I am interviewing Margaret Carter for the Oregon State Capitol Foundation Oral History Project. It is May 27th, 2025, and we are in Portland, Oregon. Thanks for being here with us this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much, Morgan.
Let's start with your early life in Louisiana. Tell me about your family and your upbringing.
It was a fun time in my life. My father was a Baptist minister, and his work was he was as terrible. He was a home builder, and so we knew everybody in the community, and we would always have activities. We always had ministers and their wives come to dinner on Sunday. I don't ever remember Sunday that a minister was not having dinner at our house all the while I was growing up, that it was that often, every Sunday. So it was exciting. And then when I was 9, my mom sent me for private music lessons by one of the most known, shall I say, most renowned music teacher, a black woman who did gospel and classical music. And by the time I was 15, I was playing piano for my father's church because I adapted to gospel music on the piano faster than they thought. And I didn't think that I was ready, but my music teacher thought I was ready. It would be helpful because it would be like practicing when I was not taking music lessons. So I grew up doing that, and then I became a member of the very popular singing group called the Mount Calvary Gospel Singers. We were the first black singing group. There were always quartets, but we were a singing group with music that was on radio every Sunday morning. And then we sung across what we call the Arklatex, and that's Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. So every weekend I was gone somewhere in the Arklatex area. And on one occasion we were invited to sing in Chicago, and we went there as well. So, it's been stage life all of my life. And I just had a great time. Graduated from high school, graduated in second place in my class. It was an exciting time because I played piano for the church in the community where I went to school. And so it was quite a popular time for me in my life, going to school with young people that sang in the choir with me, that I played piano for the church. So it was exciting. I had a good life. Received a scholarship to go to Grambling State University, which was just Grambling College at the time, and dropped out of school and got married to Charles Williams, which was my first husband. And we stayed married for 19 years. So it was great. I had a great time, but at the same time, having a great time with my community, it wasn't such a great time in going downtown to the stores or going to the grocery store, because you were always reminded that you're black and that you're in second place in this country. So that bothered me for a while, and I always knew I wanted to go someplace else where I'd be recognized as a human being and not just as a black woman in America. But I also found out that no matter where you go, if you're a black person, you're going to be made known that you're a black person, and that you should not try to strive to be greater than your white female colleagues and that kind of stuff. But I've been kind of stubborn around that stuff, so I fight hard against discrimination in trying to limit me, and been known for that. And some people don't like it, but oh well, that's who I am. So you accept me as I am, or we're not friends, or I'll go someplace else and look for a job. And I've never had a hard time finding a job. Because when I left Shreveport to come to Portland, Oregon, I left with 5 babies and $100 in my pocket. And that's all I had when I arrived here, and have been able to make it for 55 years, you know. And so it was wonderful growing up. I'm a proud Black woman born and raised in the South, because it gave me strong values and knowing how to fight for who you are and what you stand for. My value systems are very much in the right place. Also loving people. I see people and I speak. I don't care what color they are. I see people and I talk to people. I invite people to my home that don't look like me. So I'm cool with me, and that's kind of the story of growing up in Shreveport, Louisiana.
So tell me about moving to Portland, Oregon in 1967.
Yeah, that was a tough time for me, because I moved as a result of domestic violence. And it was not a good time for me in my life. I felt depressed, and but I'm not a giver-upper. You know, I knew that even though I was going through those trials and tribulations, being married, that I would not give up being not just a mother, but a good mother for my children, and working hard to try to send them to college and to do things that some kids could not do because they didn't have the money to do. And I've been blessed to have good jobs and could send my kids. They went to private school through until they got ready to go to high school. And it was just a good time moving to Portland, Oregon. And yes, I've had some setbacks, but that's life. And but I don't let setbacks stop me from going forward. I move forward regardless. I'm determined that nothing or no one can keep me from going where I want to go. Even this year, my 89th year in this world, I don't stop. I don't stop at all. And I don't regret the trials and tribulations I've had. They made me the woman that I am today. And I'm very proud of that.
Tell me a little bit about any similarities or differences regarding race and racism you noticed in Portland compared to the South.
Right. In the South, you know where you stand. You know who you are. You know the expectations. Here in Oregon, it's so masked that you don't know where you stand and who people are, because they could be the worst racists you ever been around in Oregon, and you'd never know it unless something comes out from them that lets you know who it is. So it's much more much more cloistered than, say, in the South. It's just right open in the South, but here it's cloaked. You don't know. It's like the President of the United States, the worst racist president in my lifetime of living on this earth. And I remember presidents that goes back as far as President Roosevelt. And so, and I've been watching the presidency since that time. And so I'm not unaccustomed to hearing the voice of racism sound like our president sound, but I'm also afraid for the future of many Black people in this country as we move forward, because I don't think many young people have experienced the kind of racism that is poking its head out now, and used to the suffering of not having food to eat, with them cutting food stamps and that kind of stuff. So it's it's a little troublesome for me, not as much for my family as it is for other families. That bothers me because as a person who lives in the United States of America, if I have to go wash somebody's dishes to make money to help feed my 4 generations, that will happen. So, but I feel sorry for us as a nation of people that we had moved so far and all of a sudden to have the kind of misleadership that we have in the nation, in our nation right now.
You talked about the importance of music in your upbringing, and
Yeah.
education was also very important to you.
Yes. Because my mother always said, in Emma Carter's house, you go to school, you graduate from high school, you can decide to go to college, or you can decide that you need a job, or you can go to the military. That's what most black families, those options most black families had in America at that time. And because there were no, I think there may be a sewing factory and some other kind of factories in Shreveport. So people basically worked in department stores, or most of the kids when they graduated, they left Louisiana because there were no really great opportunities for their skill level. So it was really, really hard. But the easy part for me, what made life more comfortable for me, was my singing. Our singing group sung every Sunday morning, as I said before, and I would be invited to sing solos at different churches or on programs someplace. And so I always had a fulfilled life growing up in Louisiana. Music today is still very dear to me. And at my church, we sing a cappella music, but I still have a prominent role to play in that community of singing. And so it's very exciting. I go to a lot of concerts and enjoy music there. But I must admit, I don't get a chance to play the piano much because I'm not home. Morgan, it just keeps me so busy in my life that I'm not as wedded to the piano and as much as I used to be. Because I would never pass my piano at home. But I find myself passing this piano all the time.
You were able to go back to school once you were in Portland, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You got married. I think that interrupted your initial undergraduate education.
Right.
So talk to me about what led you to go back to school and what you studied and what those experiences were like.
Yeah, I went back to school, and it's really interesting because I didn't have the money to go back to school, so I would need to have some state help. And our governor at the time was Governor Tom McCall, and he had said there are too many people with skill levels that could help with the state's budget, and so we need to give some of these people money to go back to school. So I was one of those people, and I always wanted to repay the citizens of the state of Oregon who allowed me to go back to school, and that's why my work is in the community and across the state of Oregon as it is today, because I'm a person who is so grateful that I always wanted to give back. And so I went back to school and then got a job in the counseling department at Portland Community College, and stayed there for 27 years. Then the legislature called and I left and went there. But it was interesting being in college with 9 kids, because that's a big job to manage. And I'm sure that somewhere along the line I made missteps with the children because it was school. I was on scholarship from the state, and so therefore I had to perform at a level that I felt that I should, in terms of graciousness to the people for allowing that to happen on their taxes. And so I I did that and I did good. I'd come home and my kids would meet me at the door with my house shoes and with a house dress to put on so I can go right to the kitchen and cook, leave the kitchen, go to the table and feed them, leave the table, see who had homework to be done. I mean, it had to be a managed situation, but it took my older kids to help make sure it was managed well. So the two older girls helped to get everybody in the tub, get the little one in the tub and get them a bath, and then the next group go in. And I want you to know it was one bathroom at the time. In the 60s, we had one bathroom in this big house. And people said, well, I don't know how you did it. You'll do what you have to do when you need to do it. And that's what happened to us. We managed with 9 kids and 2 adults in this house all this time, and we managed well, and everybody did have a bath every night. So it was managing a household, managing school, managing community work as well. So it was a challenging time, but it was a wonderful time as well. Because people ask me, would you do it again? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. It was hard and, like I said, challenging, but it was a very fulfilling time in my life.
So let's talk about your time in the legislature, because in 1984 you became the first Black woman elected to the Oregon legislature.
Right, right.
How did you get to that decision that you were going to run? And
well, I've always been a person who likes to act at the command of my community. And so I was asked by a group of people to run for the legislature. Strangely enough, my dear, I tell you, they were white males, Republicans, who asked me to run. And I said to them, I got to go talk to my family before I can say anything, because I never thought about being in politics. Talked to my family, everybody agreed, and everybody wished me well, but they told me one thing: if you stop directing the singing group, we will not vote for you the next time. So I had to still manage my a cappella singing group while being in the legislature, which was not an easy thing because the legislature demands so much, and the singing group, being a church musical a cappella group, it demanded a lot too. But we managed through those years. I managed to stay in the legislature for 27 years. And again, I loved it. Was it challenging? Yes. Was it hard? Absolutely. But at the same time, I couldn't see myself not doing what I was doing. And so I loved it. But being in the legislature was not an easy thing for me as a Black woman. People want to feel my hair. They want to know, how is it that you're a Southern girl and you come to Portland, Oregon, and you get elected to the legislature, and so forth and so on, in terms of questions and what made you be the person that the community selected. So it was quite interesting. And so I was in a race with 4 African-American males and 1 white female. And the interesting thing is that all the 5 of those guys became good friends and came close together. And here I was standing out like a sore thumb by myself in running for the legislature. It was, and when I say interesting and challenging, what I mean is that I got death threats. I had people following me, and we had to call the police and give them information and that kind of stuff. So it was not easy. On one occasion, one of the men who worked for one of the people who was running picked me up and sat me back down on a piece of concrete. And oh my God, I was in so much pain. But I remember one morning, Morgan, I was standing in the window and I was crying. And I said to myself then, my daughters and no other woman will go through what I am going through, and I'm not stopping. I didn't let nothing stop me. I went through all of that knowing full well that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter how long the tunnel was, I would travel it. And that's was the most frightening thing for me. Being in the legislature was not as frightening to me as running for the legislature. Because once I won, it was like people were excited that we have a black female in the legislature. But you know, it was hard to get around some of the cultural things that go on between the white community and who you are as a black woman. How did you make it? Why do you speak the way you speak? And tell me about your hair. And you know, all the little kind of silly questions just came out. But I called myself a teacher, and I got used to that. And then I just started answering questions as they were, you know, asked of me. And even until this day, I don't run away from questions, no matter how stupid they might sound from somebody else. I stop, take the time, and answer the questions. But I don't know how accepting of the questions that I answered was by the person who asked me in the first place. And I didn't give a damn.
So when you first ran, it was for the House.
Yes.
And talk to me, I think it was House District 18.
Yes, yes.
So describe to me like the geography of that district, what your constituents were concerned about at the time.
Right. Well, that's really kind of interesting because it goes as far north as Columbia Boulevard and as far east as some portions, but down toward Columbia the most, to about 42nd. And it would go as far south as, I think, southeast 12th, and over by Kaiser Hospital East. And so it was pretty big, but I have you know, I was so determined. Rain, shine, sleet, or snow, I was knocking on doors, 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. Finally, one of the guys who was one of the people who helped get Democrats elected said he called the person who was in the seat and told them, Margaret Carter is out here in the rain at 9 o'clock at night knocking on your door. And the guy said, what? She's working like that? Yes. And I would go and have appointments at 6 a.m. in the morning before I went to work at PCC. It was not an easy feat, I should tell you that. It was very hard, very hard. But it was something that I knew I had to break the ice, and I did. And I enjoyed it.
What's it like being a freshman representative?
Oh, it would have been harder on me had it not been for a group of my female colleagues, as you know, all white, who saw something in me that they said it would be good for the body, for Democrats, and that was Vera Katz, Darlene Hooley, that we worked together very closely and got things done. And they guarded me and directed me on every step of the way in my freshman year. And it was really, really very good. And I managed quite well to get through that year with those guys at my side. That was really great. And I got legislation that people thought we could never get passed in Oregon. And so that made me feel kind of good as well.
Do you want to tell me a bit some of that legislation?
Yeah, we did something on economic development because that's what was hard in our community. a lot of companies were moving out of the Northeast area. And so our people didn't have jobs. And that was 1983 when I first ran, and won in 84 and started serving in 85. But it was hard to find a job in this community. And that's when the gang activities started as well, because most of our young people had nothing to do, no place to go. And so that's when gang activity was so prominent in our community. So I managed to get the legislation through to try to get some summer jobs for our young people and get more steady jobs for the men in our community. So that's why economic development was the first priority on my list. And the one thing about our caucus, you have a priority bill and what is your secondary bill. Your priority bill, everybody makes a decision to vote for that bill because that's your priority. We want you to come back to the legislature. So they voted to support me on that, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, but I can't think of the name of the bill right now. But what it did was to allow small businesses the first 5 years of their lives that they don't have to pay taxes at the regular cost of taxation for small businesses. But the 5th year, that's when you start paying the real cost of what it was to be in business. And it worked out very well that even the Nabisco company benefited from it and kept some of their employees on, which was a part of the bill, the requirements of the bill as well. So I enjoyed that. And my second year, is it okay to go
Yeah,
on?
absolutely.
And the second year that we just knew, because everybody in our community had told me, if you want us to support you, we want a bill that is going to help stop the killing of black people in South Africa. And so I sponsored, by this time, McCall is out of office and Atia is in office, and we got that legislation through. It was funny, though. It was funny because representative from Halsey, Representative Van Leeuwen, we got to a point where we were talking about the segregation that was going on, and Senator and Representative Van Leeuwen said, but you know what, there are a lot of people who don't mind going to the back door of their master's house, and I don't see why that's such a big deal with you. And it was really a time when people laughed out loud, and the chairman had to really knock them back in order because it was not supposed to be a funny thing. But she didn't vote, and some of the other Republicans didn't vote for it, but I managed to get that bill through the legislature as well. So I got economic development, I got the social order, and then did things around education and with Portland Community College in our school district. Because I don't know whether you know it or not, but in the late 60s, early 70s, we paid white teachers combat pay to teach in this community. And it was quite nauseous to a lot of the people in this community that that was going on. So they wanted that to have to stop as well. And I can't remember what year we stopped paying combat pay to teach school in this community, but that happened. And it was, I thought was really pretty disgusting, because teachers were going to teach where they could get a job. But why you had to pay them to come here was because a lot of people didn't want to teach, and a lot of white teachers didn't want to teach in the black community. They were afraid to come over here. So there were many different challenges that went on, but in terms of education, everything, all the bills that I brought through, they were able to go through with the support of the caucus members.
Tell me what it's like when you're a new legislator. regarding your schedule. You were still teaching,
Yeah.
and now you're a legislator. So how are you balancing that, and how often are you driving to Salem?
It's, let me tell you what's interesting about that. If you worked for a multinational corporation, you could just give them your little check and they could pay you what they were paying you to work. But because I worked for an educational institution, I could not do what they call double dip. I could not receive a check from the state for still working on my job and giving them the check. And it was not, again, it was double dipping, so therefore it was inappropriate to take place. So I gave up a $2,500 a month job to make $1,100. When I first went to the legislature, that's how much money we made, $1,100. And with all these kids at home, I was eligible for food stamps, you know. I didn't apply, but I totally was eligible for it because it was just crazy how we pay our legislators in this state. But we are a state, we were one of, I think now, it was 6 at one time, one of 6 states in the nation that paid low wages to their legislators. But I managed to stay for 27 years. And at first I would come home each day after the legislature was over, drive home. But then when I got into office as a member of the caucus, and I played roles being co-chair for Ways and Means and being chair of other committees of importance. And so I started renting with my roommate, Vicki Walker, and at first with Shirley Gold and those people, where we could stay down and come home on weekends. But it never failed that something would go wrong and I'd have to stay in Salem and I wouldn't get home until 11 or 11:30 at night, and I just couldn't keep that up, so I had to get an apartment with some friends in Salem.
And were you still keeping your a cappella singing group through this whole time?
Yes, I'm still keeping an a cappella singing group, and we had to travel to Seattle a lot to sing in competition and with other a cappella singing groups, and then I'd have to try to get home before too late at night because I had to be back up to go to the legislature on Monday morning. So it was it was a tough time, but I am so crazy. I was enjoying it all. You know, I never allowed myself to be so tired that I couldn't make it. You know, I was challenged enough by my lifestyle that I kept going.
Then in 2000, you were elected to the Oregon Senate.
Right. Bill McCoy became ill, and I ran for his seat, but another guy whom I had beat in the House seat beat me in the Senate seat. So I didn't win the first term, but I won the second term of going to the Senate. And in the Senate, I became Senate President pro tem on one occasion. And then I was also the co-chair of Ways and Means. And those were honors that had not been bestowed on other women from my community, let alone other groups from my cultural group. So it was exciting time in the Senate, and it was fun time in the Senate, and it was, again, very, very challenging time because you didn't have as much looseness in the Senate that you had in the House. I guess I could say you were more poised being in the Senate, and you had to be a little more careful about your actions in the Senate. But I enjoyed it a lot.
What were some other differences or similarities between serving in either house? Your
Well,
terms are longer, right? So you
right.
don't have to
The
be.
term, that's right. And you don't have to start right back campaigning the minute you start your year in the legislature, in the House. And so that was kind of good. And if you wanted to run for any other office while being in the Senate, you could also do that. But I wasn't interested. I wanted to pay close attention to what was going on in the legislature on behalf of my community. And the other thing that I found, Morgan, that I thought was so important, how could I have lived in this world as long as I had lived and not be a part of making decisions for our community like I saw the whole body doing? And it's what I see our congressional people doing right now, where black people have lost so much ground as a result of the Republicans and the Republican president at this particular time. And it just makes me sick that I feel powerless to do anything. Even if we tried, we can't at this point, because the Republicans own the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So there's nothing you can do but sit back and pray like I do for the goodness of the hearts of men, that they won't take away those things that are so meaningful, like food stamps to our community, for poor people, that they won't continue to screw up our Social Security. That Social Security is not welfare. Social Security is money that was taken out of our paychecks and put in what was supposed to be an insurance, that when we got ready to retire, the government would give it back to us in terms of monthly pay. And so this Elon Musk doing what he has done at the will of Mr. Trump is just, number one, out of line and absolutely disgusting to happen to our country like this.
And illegal and unconstitutional.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Very illegal, very unconstitutional for this to be happening. But I think that it produces a challenge to the American people, because we can decide if we want a democracy or if we're going to, have an autocracy. And I don't think the people who want to have an autocracy understand that you lose your freedom when that happens. And I'm not willing to trust that.
Had your community's interests, concerns changed at all or evolved when you ran for the Senate or in 2000 compared to when you first ran for the House?
It had. And from that day to this day, it has changed immeasurably. But the one thing that I was able to do is everything my community asked in terms of bill, legislation, asked of me, I was able to accomplish it. And that set well with them. And so I had friendships on both sides of the aisle. I had good friendship with Larry Campbell, who was the Speaker of the House, or two of the people who helped get me into the legislature, Roger Martin, who just passed away, and Dave Barrows, who passed away. They both made sure that I had enough money to do the door knocking that I needed to do and to hire the help that we needed to have to win this race. And we were able to do that.
I would imagine that how your constituents were able to communicate with you changed over time, from physical letters and phone calls to eventually email. Your
Yeah.
your legislative career spanned an interesting time.
Right. It's really interesting because I was in my community all the time. I was visiting churches. I was being invited to speak in churches. I was invited to have dinner in people's homes. I was invited to the children's graduation. Will you come to our school? Will you speak at our graduation? Will you come to my daughter's whatever running that she was having? I mean, I was invited to every pig trail activity that was going on in our community. And guess what? I went. I think that's the difference between me and some of the other people who have a hard time getting elected, or some of the people that are not as connected to the community as I am. Until this day, I am still very popular with our people in this district. And that's why I'm still invited to so many different activities in our community. This whole last week, I was busy in our community, not getting home till 9:30 at night. And I tell you, sometimes to be 89 years of age and trying to fulfill this schedule has become a little challenging because I need a little more rest than I used to have. But I'm still enjoying it a lot.
Talk to me about your committee work. You mentioned that you served as co-chair of Ways and Means. What does it mean to serve on a committee? Just for a layperson, explain how you get appointed to the committee, what your responsibilities are.
Well, as a co-chair of Ways and Means, what you're doing is looking at the budget, where you're going to make cuts, who's going to have the opportunity to have bills passed, how are you going to support those bills, or if you're not, and trying very hard to work with the governor to see what he wants to have, and looking at other executive officers in terms of the legislature, what they were going to be requesting of the legislature. So you had to be sharp on that and looking at the budget. But thank God we had a guy who worked in the budget office who was very, very good at what he did. And he would work with us, and we'd look at the budget and we'd talk about what were our priorities, what was the priorities of the Senate, what was the priority of the president, the Speaker of the House, all that kind of stuff. So you had to manage all of that and manage it to the point, because in state government you can't go over your budget, and so you have to stay within the criteria of the budget. And so that was working hard and making sure that you were making ends meet. And at the same time, you have 29 other members who are saying, I need this, and on, and you're trying to balance their need too. So what you do is talk to the president of the Senate to see how we're going to work with these things and what we're going to do to get through that particular term.
So we talked about your committee work, but you also served as the president pro tem for the Senate. So tell me about how you got, did you get elected to that position? Is it a vote?
The president appoints, and I'm trying to remember now. I think he appointed me. I don't think there was a vote. Well, I have to ask my former staff person, whom I'm still in touch with. Was I voted in? Was I appointed?
What did those?
I think you have to be voted in.
Okay. What are those responsibilities?
Those responsibilities are to take over where the president leaves off. If he is going to a meeting with the governor or something of that nature and he has to make an appearance, then I would have to do that. That I would take over getting the legislature started, I'm trying to think of the word as to why I'm having some problems here. You not knock.
You gavel?
You
Or-
gavel. You gavel in the people to open the legislature, and you take over the duties then of the president. And so that had not happened to a black member of the legislature before. So that was another milestone in addition to the milestone of being appointed president. I'm sorry, co-chair of Ways and Means. And so it was, oh, and if members come to you that have some problems at home or something of that nature, you have to have them to get that settled so you can have them there for the vote. And what shocked me about the legislature when I was in the House, that if you get sick or something, you're in the hospital, you're in another state, or anything else, they can call the House to session and call you into the legislature no matter where you are. I was speaking in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they didn't have enough votes on a piece of legislation that they felt was very needed by the caucus. So I had to get on a plane. The state police in Arkansas came and picked me up, put me on the plane, and the state police in Oregon met me at the airport and took me to the legislature. So the legislature doesn't play. Once, when former Representative Mike Burton was in the hospital and we needed his vote, they had to hire an ambulance to bring him to the legislature, and he had to raise his head and say, "Mike Burton votes aye." So it's those kind of demands that are placed on you. Vera Katz could not go to her son's graduation from college because we were called into a special session. So if you don't think you're going to like those kind of things, you wouldn't like being a legislator, because sometimes the demands are greater than you think they should be. But nevertheless, you have to do it. And so that was, I missed my father's funeral because I was late getting a plane from Portland to Denver, missed my flight in Denver, had to stay in Denver for a day, and got to Shreveport, and I just was able to go to the gravesite with my father. So there's such good days, but they're also very hard days, especially when it comes down to death in your family or a kid graduating from college and you want to go, but you can't go because the demands of the legislature.
So you've already mentioned some of these, but I want you to reflect perhaps a little bit more about additional accomplishments or challenges during your time in the legislature. 27 years, right?
Yeah, 27 years. I think some of the challenges came, one in particular, you remember when, excuse me for a moment, who was the prison guard, who was the prison guy that was killed?
The prison guy who was killed?
Yeah, he was over, no, he wasn't a prison guard. I'm just trying to think. He was over the justice, over the prison, I'm sorry, over the prisons in Oregon. And, oh God, I can't think of his name. But he was killed. And I was one of the people who spoke on behalf of him. And some people came from Idaho, and they had to send the state police to protect me because of these people. I can't think of his name.
Oh, Michael Frank?
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, it was Michael. And it was a very sad time. And I was even hung in effigy on the grounds of the state legislature. And I just kind of turned it into a joke, and I said, Madam Speaker, I was just hung in effigy on the grounds of the state legislature. And what makes me feel so bad about it, they put me on a Dottie Switch dress, and all of you guys know I dress much better than that. And so everybody just broke out into laughter. But at the same time, they knew it was serious. But I had to make a joke out of it to keep from crying about the many different threats that I was receiving as being a member of the legislature. And then on one occasion, my staff was with me, and we were going to our house in Salem, and a person had been following us. And by the time we got to our driveway, it was my staff had the the key for the to let the door down, and they almost hit us trying to get into our garage before they could get there. And so we called the state police, and the state police came out, and they couldn't find anybody at that point. But those were the many kind of harassments that my staff and I went through, even though my staff was white. You know, they were not after the staff, they were after me. And I don't know what I had done that day, or what bill I had passed, or what I had said on the floor of the house that would make that happen, but it did. And a lot of times it didn't have to be anything that was bad. Just the fact that I was the first black female to be a member of the legislature was insulting to them. So it was those many different near cries well, I should say crises, not just cries, but crises that I had for being in the legislature. Some of the greatest opportunities I had was being able to show leadership, and that anytime there was a request from me to the speaker and it had to be voted on, I would always win, because I had that kind of respect in the legislature. I had respect on the Republican side as well. And as a matter of fact, I think it bothered people, Democrats in particular, a lot that I had so many Republican friends. But I believe in all of us as Oregonians, and that all of us want the best for our state, even though sometimes they voted against what was best for the state. And I just take it as another ideal for them, that we want to do anything but keep the Democrats from being successful. So I try not to hold that against them or get angry with them until it was serious things that I felt that they should be taking a look at, that was of statewide necessity. But they still didn't vote for it. Whatever it was that we were doing that included both rural Oregon and urban Oregon. Now, there were times when urban Oregon certainly reflected me, not just Portland, but reflected my community, that we were in support of each other, because that was very necessary. One thing in particular, I remember Senator Gordley was working with the Republicans regarding building some kind of building in recognition of the urban rural togetherness. And that worked, and it was really reflective of being Oregonians and not just Republicans or Democrats or rural or urban, but just the fact that the state of Oregon needed it.
Speaking of Democrats versus Republicans, do you recall over your tenure in the legislature, were there times when you were in the minority party versus the majority party as to who controlled the House and Senate?
Yes, yes. It was really, really interesting when the Democrats lost in 1983, and Newt Gingrich had come to Congress, and he had stopped Republicans' relationship with Democrats, and many of my friends were Republicans, and all of a sudden we couldn't go anywhere together. We couldn't be seen together because of Newt Gingrich's new order for Republicans across the state, across the country. And that was painful to me because I wanted to keep my friendship with the many people that I had made friendship with. And it caused me to question whether it was a good thing to have friendship across the aisle. But after researching my own heart and mind and my soul, and everything was called into place about that, I came to the conclusion that it was more important to me to recognize the fact that we all had to do our duty, and whatever they felt was their duty, they being Republicans, was their duty, they had to do it. And whatever was my duty, I had to do it. And that's the first time I was challenged in my thoughts about having relationships across the aisle. But I never did let it go. I felt important to the cause of building strong relationships for the good of Oregonians, and not just being selfish as a Democrat myself, but realize that what they had to do, they had to do, but what I had to do, I had to do.
So your tenure with the legislature ended 2009?
Yes, yeah.
And you started working for the Department of Human Services?
Yes, exactly. I started working for the department, and I was assistant director to Dr. Goldberg, and that was an interesting thing. That's when I met racism face to face, because people were not supportive. People in the department were not supportive of me being the assistant to the head of the Department of Human Resources. So my challenge was met with a lot of disappointment on my part, because they were people that I supported while I was in the legislature, never one time voted against any kind of changes that the department was calling up on the legislature to do. And I thought I had nothing but a group of friends over there, only to find out I didn't when it comes down to me serving as their assistant administrator. I think probably one of the most disheartening thing to me was meeting with a group of people who had invited me to dinner, and I went, and they were there questioning what did I think about a Jew being head of the Department of Human Resources. And I said, I think Dr. Goldberg is doing a good job. I don't see why there should be any problems, any complications. He has not tried to impose upon the department any kind of legislation that was against any one individual, but I like him. But they did not like a Jew being in charge of the Department of Human Services.
How long were you at that department?
I see for 5 years, and I was treated very bad. They would not allow me to have the kind of relationship that other people who had worked in the legislature or worked in the administration. I could not get any of the benefits. They told me that if I fight for benefits, they would take the position away from me. I was not able to get into PERS and register at that level of income. And so my income reflects now my being a member of the legislature, not my administrative duties. That hurt me to the core. And that's when I found out that racism at its greatest height was disallowing me what all the other white people had received when they went to administrative duties. It hurt me to the core. Even until this day, as we speak right now, my income should be more than what it is. But because of racism, it is what it is.
And so then after those 5 years, were you retired from?
I retired from the Department of Human Resources and came home and have been busy ever since. I went to work for a marijuana company and worked for them for about 3 years. And then my speaking engagements picked back up, and I was on the road just about every week of my life. And so that's how I was building my income, because I could not build it as an administrator in the Oregon legislature.
What do you think are your legacy as a legislature in Oregon?
I think my legislature will be a legacy of success, because people did like me. I was not what you call a troublemaker. I'm a very cooperative person. If I say yes to something, you can believe I'm not going to backslide on it or anything else. I'm going to do what is expected of me to do. And I think that's the way people saw me. And I know in my community, when you mention people in the legislature, my name comes close to the top. And all of that is good, but I can't live like those that went to administrative offices for 5 years because my income level is so much lower than theirs.
You were the first Black woman elected to the Oregon legislature, and I would imagine that being a first of anything has its pros and has its cons.
Yes. The pros was that my community for the first time could say that we are glad that Margaret Carter is there, because our community is being seen as a vital, very vibrant community and coming into its own as a result of that. Because when I spoke, I did not speak for self. I spoke for the good of the community. And anything they had come to ask for me through the legislative process, to the greatest of my abilities, it was done. Very few things that I did not get done that my community wanted me to get done. And I kind of bathe in that because I feel good about it. So when I would go to any of my colleagues about something of that nature, I didn't find trouble in the waters. You know, people would try very hard to support me. And if anybody had a problem with a bill that I brought, um, my support from Katz and Hooley would come through where they would say, listen, I've talked to these people, and you go see, can you talk to them again and see what do they want from you to be able to support you on your legislation. And that's how we were able to get Martin Luther King bill through, the South African divestiture bill through, the Economic Development Committee bill through as well.
I know that community is so important to you, and tell me a bit about your family. I mean, your family supported you through the career you had at PCC, through your career in the legislature. Tell me how many children you have, grandchildren.
Yeah. When I first went to the legislature, there were only 4 kids. That's my last 4 kids that were left at home. Everybody else was in college or had gotten married or something of that nature. And my oldest daughter was always the oldest of the children that were still here, with the 2 girls, Emily and Cynthia. And I could trust them if I had to stay overnight at the legislature for any reason. And they were very responsible. They could get the kids to school because there was only 4 of them left at home. And I wouldn't have to worry about that. And pretty soon we got to the point where I was able to come home and help do the duties of the kids in school and cooking and waking up. I'd have to leave for work like 6:30 every morning to go to the legislature so I could get there, make sure I was there by 8 o'clock. And I can't say it was not burdensome. I can't say that it was not. Challenging is one thing, but burdensome is another. And I felt challenged by that a lot, but I never felt as if I had to be challenged by deciding not to be in the legislature, because my mother was alive then and she would help do some cooking. My friend Darlene would help cook for the kids and see about them and make sure that everything was done well. And my oldest sister, Dorothy, the kids loved her, and so she would help with that. So I had a lot of help while I was in the legislature, and people did it willingly. So that was good for me. But it was also troubling in the fact that I felt that I wasn't being a good mother because I wasn't coming home to help cook for them and get them ready for school and get them off to school. So I had to operationalize my feelings in terms of doing good for the people of the state of Oregon versus my motherhood. And so that did come into play for me. And I eventually worked that out, and friends helped me to work that out, that they were doing what they were doing because they want to do it and they want to see me stay in the legislature. So it was kind of like a two-way street. But, and the two-way street was that they were doing a good job helping with the kids, but I was feeling as if I was negligent because I was not here to do it myself.
In 2025, how many generations of your family are in the area?
We have 4 generations, and the 4th generation now live in Seattle. They just moved. Her husband, my granddaughter's husband, is an engineer, and he was summoned to a job in Seattle in engineering. So they're there, and I have two other daughters who are in Seattle as well. And I had one daughter now, but it was two in Las Vegas. My other daughter came home last week, and then my other children are here in Seattle, in Portland, enjoying themselves and enjoying their motherhood.
And you were one of 9 growing up.
Right.
And then you had 9.
Right.
And how many grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
There are 26 grands, 28 great-grands, and 3 great-great-grands. So it's a house full.
Those are the questions I had for you. Is there anything you wanted to make sure that we talked about as we covered your extensive career and your many years in Oregon?
Morgan, I don't think you missed a thing, my dear.